Can everybody hear me?
No. Read? Away yesterday.
Hey.
I think they should stop now. They should move towards that.
Not the water world.
We're going to start. Hi, everybody. This is the RENCI Brownbag lecture for February. These started as very informal, and we're starting to be a little more formal about trying to offer them every third Wednesday of the month. That may change once in a while, and offering outside audiences to come in as well. So welcome all you non-RENCI people from campus who managed to make it out here today. Today the topic is developing a secure medical research workspace. We have 3 speakers that'll share duties, starting with Michael Schaffner, who is a senior research software engineer here and also adjunct faculty with SILS. Phil Owen, IT developer here at RENCI, and Xiaoshu Wang, who is a senior biomedical researcher. So we're going to start right off with Michael. Welcome.
Thanks, and thanks everybody for coming out. And see, some of you have your lunch, which is in the true spirit of the RENCI Brownbag. That's how I kind of got started. Lunchtime talk. So today we're going to talk about developing a secure medical research workspace. So this is not just a clever name for the presentation. Typically, I like to start presentations of this nature by giving kind of a hard, concrete problem, if you will, or sort of a pain point, and what are we doing concretely. In this case, I thought it might be better to just start with a little bit of context and sort of to give the flavor for the nature of this collaboration, the breadth of it, the depth of the collaboration, and the various people and institutions who are involved with the collaboration, just to kind of set the stage with that. So let's start up here at the top. The CTSA Clinical and Translational Science Award is an NIH program that is focused on what they call bench to bedside, which is translating medical research into tangible clinical outcomes for communities. Here at UNC, we have a CTSA-funded institute called the TRACS Institute. And it's actually one of the major institutes here, if not the major one. I guess along with probably with Lineberger. So TRACS is this project is really sort of under the aegis of TRACS in a lot of ways, and in terms of this project, TRACS is providing sort of the use cases, a lot of the project infrastructure in a way, and the drivers for what we're doing. School of Medicine is also part of it. UNC Hospitals, SILS, and of course RENCI is in here. We're doing mostly the technology R&D component of the project. So some credits. Long list of people here. There are actually probably some others as well. These are the main folks on the project at this point. Javed is PI of it. He's at SILS and also is director of the Bioinformatics Core. Is that correct? He's in the room. I'm looking at him nodding. Charles Smith, director of informatics here at RENCI. Brent Lamb is IT director at NC TRACS. These are the speakers today, myself, Phil, and Xiaoshu. Casey is another guy from RENCI. He does infrastructure work and security and has helped us out a great deal. Ray DiOrio is at TRACS. He's essentially a research analyst. He helps researchers get their data to them. Ken Langley at School of Medicine is our networking guru. And Eric Scott, we try to steal some of his time when we can, as sort of general all-around DBA security kind of white hat type guy in most cases. So anyway, you can see from this that we have a large team here, and the takeaway from this is that this is highly interdisciplinary, and we're pulling from all these folks' expertise to ensure the success of the project. All right, so now, what is this? What are we doing? The drivers, the problems. Protected health information, PHI data must be protected at all times. Well, that's kind of a no-brainer. But the question is, how do you do it? Well, it's not easy. And so to deal with it's definitely not easy. It's hard. And to kind of get a handle around, or get a handle on that is kind of what the project is about. At a deeper level, though, lack of a security solution for working with PHI is impeding translational research, meaning that the TRACS Institute has the Carolina Data Warehouse for Health here, which has got a ton of clinical data for use, hopefully, by researchers and clinicians. But the problem is, how do you get it to them securely? Well, you can provision it, stick it on a floppy or something, or a USB key, and then it goes off to some researcher, and then what happens? We don't know. Do they lose it? Don't know. Does somebody break in and take it from them? Don't know. Okay, so clearly right at the margin, we have to have an answer for this problem. We have to be able to figure out how to solve this provisioning problem, to provision this data in a way that everybody can feel like it's actually going to be safely and securely handled. So the vision of this project, the first piece, provide a convenient, secure access mechanism for this PHI for UNC healthcare professionals and researchers as well. What this looks like, and Phil and Xiaoxu will get into this more in depth in a few minutes. The basic overview is we have this container that has the PHI in it. Back here is the data warehouse, and right here is the boundary between the data warehouse and TRACS and the TRACS Research Institute research analysts. And then the workspace is somewhere in here. Researchers are out here. So we want this boundary here to be strong, mainly this boundary. And the way this plays out is that a researcher, user A in this diagram, will have a workspace provision to them, secure workspace provision to them. The data from here goes to here. They use it, they do their project, they do their research, get results out, and then when they're through, it just is wiped, essentially. It's gone. So nowhere have we had data going from here out to somewhere, the interwebs somewhere, and picked up or off somewhere over here and lost. So that's the first thing we're trying to accomplish. The second thing is, I don't know if anybody can tell what this picture is. It's a bit cryptic, but other than just a splotch of paint on a tree, it's a trail blaze. So the idea here is for this project to help set a direction, help bring out some leadership in the space that other people can use, so that we produce this system, but it doesn't just sit in a box somewhere or sit on a shelf. It's disseminated out there because there's a lot of need for this type of solution out in the medical research world and in other broader contexts as well, not just there, but since we're concentrating there. So that's part two. And part three, I didn't really have a fancy graphic for this, but maintain a test bed for ongoing development, meaning we have put a lot of work into infrastructure for this project, and in partnership with TRACS, School of Medicine, also ITS as well, and the hospital, which is what ISD is in this slide. We put a lot of work into this environment, and we want to maintain that going forward so that we can keep this thing up to date. What's the overall strategy for this project? I thought I'd just throw this up here just to put it at the high level. The philosophy of defense in depth, which is a term I think that originated in the intelligence agencies, describing a basic approach for creating a secure environment of whatever nature. It basically means that you don't just put up one wall, or one answer to one set of problems, one type of wall. You try to produce other ones. You try to create at every level some sort of defense, so that you're not just counting on some Maginot Line or something sits out there, and when that is breached, what happens then? So we've tried to apply this as sort of a philosophical driver for the project. In terms of development, we prefer vendor solutions when we can get them. Not easy to find them, that work according to, that work at all, actually. A lot of it's vapor, a lot of it works partially. Some vendors do one thing well and fail in other areas, but in general, it's very hard to find anything that actually does what we want it to do here. So, we'll take off the shelf when we can get it, but we also have the ability to integrate some custom code as needed. And we have some CS folks in the audience I see who are doing really good work in that area. We'll mention them a little bit later. We track ongoing security research, which is also kind of a function of keeping in touch with CS and IS researchers in the space who are really doing some things that are out more on the bleeding edge than we can be. Test, and test again before it goes into production. It's hard to overemphasize that one, but it's crucial. So now I'm going to turn it over to Xiaoshu to do some overview of the technology landscape and some of the drivers in the DLP space to give a background for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So my name is Xiaoshu Wang. So I'm going to give you guys an overview of the involved technologies, for implement a secure workspace. So roughly, we have a workspace. So I draw, intentionally this wall is kind of vague, because the workspace can be a laptop, can be a, organization, so. But then basically, these blue lines represent the data flow. So you have data in and out. So concerns about the jargon of security, if you go to the marketplace, so in general, I think you can divide the security software or system into two parts. One is called intrusion protect system. Usually this is a firewall or some other kind of technology. Basically, the purpose here is to prevent the intrusion of the system, to prevent some hackers, hacking the system. So basically, this is more of like access control, authentication of the identity. And then there is, to prevent data leak out of the workspace. So, these two words, data loss protection and data leakage protection is used interchangeably, but I prefer leakage because sometimes if you say, if I put data on my hard drive gets corrupted, data is still lost. So I think the data leakage is more appropriate, in terms of semantics to imply what's the meaning. So the definition, the data leakage is basically the unauthorized transmission of data from within an organization to an external destination. So it just need to emphasize a little bit is the unauthorized doesn't mean intentional. So a lot of leakage actually is leaked out, unintentionally. So this is actually a data I obtained from InfoWatch. This is their report, Global Data Leakage. You can see actually half of them is, the data is lost by, through, inadvertent event. So the types of leaked data, basically you can divide them in two parts. One is the private identifiable information. So this kind of data is more private but not a secret. So like, your social security number, patient's, medical record. So to prevent this kind of data leak out of organization, a lot of it is mostly for policy compliance. So the second kind of data is intellectual property. This is a rough category, I think, but the difference between these two categories, this is more of a secret. It's like, the company's source code, military secret, government secret. So this is not private, but it's kind of, need to be guarded very heavily. So this, again, is the data, the report from this report. You can see actually 90% of data actually is personal data. So we are in this medical space, so we can see most of this, is leaked. So I guess maybe government or company, or military, they have their own way to, because their access channel is very limited. If you want to access a military database, I guess, you have to try very hard to get a, some kind of username and password, but then private information, like hospitals data, it can be accessed by many people. So it just this give you an overview of the landscape of the problem. So the leakage channels, so there are, the data can be leaked out in many ways. You can leak out through hard copies. Actually, this is a significant amount. Like 20%, 1/5 of the data leakage is through actually papers. And then there's through mobile computers, mobile data carriers like, the flash drive, CDs, and desktop. So this is usually, hackers get in of some kind of, theft, stole the computers, and then there are some others and archived media. So this report put email, separate from the internet, through HTTP, FTP. But I think, this is the same, way because it's also the internet. So this is an interesting graph, because if you see the leakage by channel versus an intent by the combination, you can see actually the inadvertent loss by hard copy, significant jump, to like 40%. I think the reverse trend is most of the intentional, data, intentional stealing of private information or secret, is through the desktop and hard copies. So most other, I think, is similar, but these two is kind of interesting. So then, we know there will be a problem, so what we can do about it, right? So we have a workspace. Of course, the first step is to build a wall, firewall. So this is kind of to identify who is coming in. So the next is you have to do encryption, because you can, if you put data, you encrypt your data, and if, say, someone steal your hard copy, if they don't have the key, they will still unable to know what it means. So the third way is to make thin client. The purpose of making thin client is to, make the data not come into, say, your laptop. So then, people have to come here to steal this data instead of, when they steal your laptop, if you don't have data in there, so, of less data in there, so the risk is going to be smaller. And then to further prevent, the theft of the workspace, so you make a virtual workspace. So that means you centralize, your hardware somewhere, and then you only instantiate the machine. So then your data is, you can heavily guard your, the hardware. And also, when you provide also when you make a virtual space, a workspace, you can make a cut-down environment, so you can control what kind of software and data, is there. So it gives you more control. And then the first step is to check the data going out of this workspace. So this is where data loss leakage prevention technology is in. So there is another one is to provide auditing capability. You need to track and logging of everything happens here. So this is, in the event of eventually some, data was logged, and then you can, this one will give you the capability to say, okay, who is doing what, at least to cover your own fault, right, in certain sense. So now I'm talking about, the technologies on these data loss, data leakage prevention technology. So there are several channels of DLP technologies. So the first one is, of course, you have a lot of, data storage. So this, there are a lot of technology developed to scan, your NAS, your database. So the purpose is mostly to identify the hotspot of the data leakage, because if you know, so most of the private data is on this location, so you can put more measures or actions towards that. And the second is to check on the network, to check the network traffic, email, instant messengers, web, and that sort of thing. So the third one is to guard, the the move storage. So this is what they call endpoint protection. So when you talk to DLP vendors, they will tell you, okay, we do network DLP. They will sell you the whole package of doing things. But for us, what we are mostly interested at this stage is the endpoint, because we are going to provide a VM which has very limited internet capabilities. So but then we are trying to prevent people at least to know if people has copied some kind of sensitive data to their portable drive. Sure.
The room and the VM, you provision the VM and I can access the VM on a box that you completely control. It's not like I can RENCI and RDP into a box.
Yeah, so you go to a box, but then we are going to set policies to allow you to either sort of move the data. The hospital is going to provide have to go through a bunch of protocols to say, okay, I want to do something about some data. So then the hospital, we are going to provide a network storage, on that kind of data. But then we are going to control if you can copy that data from that storage to some other channel. So that is kind of what is said in the endpoint protection.
So I guess my question was more in terms of, you have a provision of VM on the server,
yeah.
And the medium of access to that VM has to be through some, you have to allow access on a computer.
Yeah.
Is the computer always owned by?
No, the access computer is not owned by.
And we're actually going to get to that topic in my section.
Okay.
So sure.
Yeah. So here, for here is we are talking about the VM, not the client machine.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I'll wait for a second.
But you can implement the whole thing on a laptop, or you say if you issue someone a laptop with and then you can set up the same thing. So that's why at the beginning I said that the workspace, the boundary is vague. So the network DLP has two kinds. One, is you can, it's bridge-based. Bridge-based is basically you set some machine, in between the two computers. I think they inspect the data at the packet level. Yeah, I think I forgot to mention, the DLP is the key of DLP is they inspect the content. It's not just to inspect to know who is doing what, but then rather they will inspect whatever the traffic is going out, and then they are going to try very hard to figure out if the traffic contains some kind of private information. Yes.
Data warehouses, the data there, the PII has not already been scrubbed, so you have. But no.
I don't think it's scrubbed, but some of the information is going to be de-identified, to be probably say the social security number is probably kind of a pseudo social security numbers. But then the thing actually, what I think what is informatics, right? So if informatics means I give you a bunch of unrelated information, you can eventually figure out what it is. So it's kind of a dilemma, about the identification, because if you totally de-identify information, that means you can never figure out what it is. But then when you do informatics, the purpose is trying to get a bunch of individual information and figure out what it is, right?
Well, maybe we'll hold it for later, but the problem becomes far more challenging if there is a lot of free-form data that's in your data stores containing this sensitive information that somehow you need to sanitize, you need to detect even with your DLP. It's not clear what that DLP will be looking for. So we can talk about that. Yeah. I just wanted context of that.
Yeah, I think maybe the flag a few slides down the road can talk about, because I'm going to talk here. I'm going to talk about what is the basic algorithm and methodologies that they try to detect to inspect the content. So for the network DLP, I think the very early solution is to do bridge, but basically they inspect at the packet level. So although they claim it's possible antagonist because you don't care if it's HTTP, FTP, because eventually it goes to the internet protocol, which is you inspect packet. But the problem is, you don't know what the format of the packet. So basically, you can only inspect the content, say, the destination of the IP address, so the semantic there is quite limited. So then I think the most of the current DLP solution is based on proxy, so basically you send a message not, straight to the outside, you send to a proxy server. The proxy server is going to unpack the document, they have to figure out, if it's a Microsoft Word or a PDF or some other encrypted data, then they try to inspect the content and then to tell you if, you are allowed to do this or not. So, yeah.
That the proxy has all encryption keys for any protocol?
No, the encryption is the hardest. So usually, I think, if you want to really enforce, you can allow people doing encryption while you can inspect it. You have to set up this, okay, this is the way you have to encrypt the data. If you choose a different method, the traffic is going to be blocked.
I see. So if I'm accessing using RDP and if they set up an SSL connection, you need to know.
Yeah, you need to know the encryption protocol and necessary keys, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Because otherwise, nobody, otherwise the encryption loss is perfect, right? If anyone can reverse engineer it. So, but then the encryption is, but then the policy, the institution has to set up a policy. Says, if you have to encrypt data, but you have to encrypt data with this method and this set of
So you
criteria.
provide the certificates for it.
Yeah. So then you can inspect it. You can set up, your proxy server to say, okay, once you get this, you encrypt it and then check it and then.
If a packet can't be decrypted, it is wrong.
I'm sorry.
If you can't decrypt the packet, it's just wrong.
So you can set up a policy. It depends on the content. If you, so this is eventually, in the future direction, we are going to collaborate with other people doing policy engineering, because then, the life is so diverse, right? So there are so many information, security is kind of always countered with the convenience. So the more security you put in, the less happiness your worker is going to be, because they are going to get pop-up message every time they move their mouse, probably, so then they are going to be annoyed. So, but this is where the challenge is, so you have to try to maximize your security but minimize the inconvenience to the user. So to discover DLP, basically, there are two ways. You can do. There is a server base. There's a client base. For the server base, you can just develop a server. Either as an appliance or a software, and then you just scan all the available network storage. You can figure out, and then the client base is you can actually inspect. To scan, such as someone's laptop. Once they connect it, you can, you scan their storage, and then you communicate with servers, and then to tell them if their laptop contains, sensitive information. So the endpoint is, DLP is to enforce the policies as, the last boundary. Mostly is for, the portable storage, and they can monitor and prevent data movement, to the content vectors. So I think the more advanced endpoint DLP actually hook up to the OS kernel level, because then you can actually monitor the activities like such as copy and paste, that sort of thing. And also, they also need to monitor the printing. That's why I said a lot of leakage actually is, through, the inherent leakage actually is through printing. So this method of algorithm, the method means, so what the DLP software need to know, they need to understand, the protocols, once they send, through, say, HTTP or HTTPS, you have to know how to get the, the sort of clear text. And you have to understand the data format. You have to understand, what kind of file format, they are using. And then you have also need to have the ability to do encryption, decryption. So you either set up policies or, and then you have to set up, to reverse engineer some of things. So the basic algorithm to detect, if some document or some traffic is hard or not is, the most basic is you set up a bunch of keywords. So you scan document, assuming it's plain text, you find the keywords, and then you are going to raise a flag, and you send to a DLP product. They will, say how I'm going to respond according to the set up the policies. And then the next is to do regular expressions, such as if you want to figure out, the key, someone wants to send out the social security numbers, credit card numbers, that sort of thing. So you can use regular expressions. So, but this is, it's kind of more rudimentary. You are, if an intentional theft, they are not going to just do, these simple methods. So there is also the fingerprinting technology. So the full fingerprinting, basically you just create a hash, then when someone sends a file, you do a hash match, then you think, they are sending a sensitive document. If you have to pre-record what is the sensitive information. And there is a more advanced, which is a partial parsing, or a cyclic parsing. So basically they take a document, so they just, do a hash, by a certain size and move it along. So they do a cyclic hash. So they create a collection of hash. So when when there's an outbound traffic, so they are going to do the similar thing. So if there's one match between this hash to this collection of hash, they are going to think, someone is trying to copy maybe a part of the content, from the sensitive document to the outside. So, and then of course, there will be statistical analysis, because all these methods, cannot prevent, someone say, to move data from here and there, and then trying to manipulate the document and then trying to send and to pull. So then there will be a statistical analysis, and then there's, so these, I read somewhere, someone says, this is called a conceptual lexicon. So basically what, because, they try to pattern their, algorithm. So I don't know how exactly it works, but conceptually, what I can understand is they try to build a model, say, it's like if you build all the characters of the whole English literature, you can create some kind of signature that says, how many A, is used, how many B is used, that sort of thing. So this is basically probably trying to build a model through a collection of lexicon. But then, then say if you have a shape, like, S curve, right? So then when people trying to change the lexicon, say if I use A to represent B, right? But then if the whole model still matches, so they will think, this is still the sensitive document. They're just trying to, to camouflage it. So because they are trying to pattern their technology, so I have no idea, but I just read from brief description and from, what I can understand. So this is what I guess what they are doing. So that's why they said conceptual lexicon is not syntactic lexicon. It's more of, they build a semantic model with some kind of, entities in there. So this is probably my last slide. So basically, there are a lot of vendors was doing this. Actually, you can see a lot of big companies' name here, but actually most of these companies never developed this product before. So I think 2 or 3 years ago, there is a series of acquisitions. So there are like a lot of DLP vendors, small companies, but then all these security companies start to occur, one by one. So, but so this is a market analysis from Gartner. So basically, so it shows you who are the leaders in these categories and who are the visionaries, niche players and challengers. That's it. All right, so now I'm going to handle the mic to Phil. So Phil is going to talk about what we are doing, what we are actually doing now. So.
Right, thank you. My name is Phil Owen, and like Xiaoshu and Michael have discussed earlier, Michael has given us an overview of the challenges at UNC, and Xiaoshu has told us a little bit about what DLP is and what is working out there currently. So what we're trying to do here, and to sort of recap, is provide and facilitate a working environment for the researchers at UNC. And this environment should protect the information that's been given to them. It should be noted that the major data warehouses and data marts are controlled by the techniques that are currently out there today. They're password protected, they got firewalls on them. But when a business analyst takes this information, or a subset of this information from the data warehouse, and provides it to the researchers, like Michael explained, it's really, where's it going? And so to try to track and make sure that we make sure that doesn't fall into the wrong hands, we want to give them an environment that protects that. So for the researcher, we're going to have a protected environment, and this environment will make sure, and just to be clear, we're talking about DLP endpoint right now. We're not talking about data in motion or data at rest right now in our first prototype. This environment is where this provisioned data, this data subset that has been extracted from the main data warehouse, is gathered up and planted for this researcher. And on this virtual environment, and it's a VMware instance, will provide the researcher with the tools that they need to work on this data. In addition, it's very important that we provide the right sort of analysis on this data so we know where it's going, where it's been. So we're going to provide security auditing capabilities, so if a policy was violated, we know who did it, what it was that caused this security violation, and how to follow back and find out what exactly happened. In addition, we also want to track how this data is being used by the researchers. So we will also be able to gather up research data usage metrics. Who's logged into this virtual environment to do their research type of activity and reporting. So I have to apologize. This is a very busy screen right here, and it doesn't translate very well to broadcasts like this. But we can make it available to you if you're interested. Just to quickly go through it, I'm going to start at 11 o'clock, and I'm going to go right around where we start with the actual researcher, and he collaborates with a research analyst to gather up the subset of information that he wants to do to do the research that he's doing. So the research analyst at this point will go and he will collect, or he or she will collect, information from the data warehouse that is important to the researcher. Meanwhile, he will also request from an administrator a virtual workspace, and this is, like I mentioned, a VMware virtual instance that the researcher will eventually log into via RDP or equivalent. And so, VDI?
So is that a VDI instance, or is that an actual virtual machine you're creating on the
Virtual machine. Yeah, and that is, in addition to that virtual machine could come from a pool of already defined virtual machines that's specific to a class of researchers, like it might have Microsoft Office on it, or SAS, or things of that nature. So the administrator of the VMs would just have to grab one from his little basket of tricks and provision the data that the research analyst has gathered up to create a workspace environment for the researcher. In addition, as we walk around down through the clock here, there's extended supervision services right here that are defined that a project auditor might use to keep track of how this workspace is being used. So if we talk a little bit about what's going on here in the secure workspace, the researcher here will connect to the UNC network, either a VPN or something of that nature, or he might already be on the UNC network. The idea here is a secure connection, and he will instantiate a VMware instance for his workspace. Now this workspace will have, like I said, the tools on it, so this researcher can do his research, and it also has DLP endpoint protection on it. So any information that this researcher uses, data will come in, but it's subject to analysis if it tries to make its way out. So we've identified that that the The researcher will have research data that's been provisioned by the research analyst. He will also have refined research data that he's pulled in from maybe other projects that he's worked on and things of that nature, so he can bring them into his space. However, when he tries to push that information out via printing or other DLP channel vectors, he's stopped if this information violates a policy. And of course, we have workspace usage auditing, where we have the DLP services are being provided by a third-party off-the-shelf component, and a security administrator can review all of these policies and create new policies and look at some events that may have occurred in the past for a forensic analysis in case some policy was violated. Physically, the physical layout of the system that we have right now, currently we have 3 rack servers, IBM X3550s, two CPUs with 6 cores each, running VMware ESXi version 4. And each one of these regions right now, we're using to create a virtual environment. And the virtual environment that we've defined so far has a DLP server. And right now, our prototype is using Trend Micro, and a number of client VMs, which represent the virtual instances of virtual workspaces that the researcher would connect to. Each virtual environment is on its own regional subnet, so traffic is limited to their region only. And we can see here that a researcher would have some sort of secure connection and maybe a VPN, or he may be connected already to the UNC network to gain access to these services. An administrator would also have access to administer the servers or any policy policy setup that they need to do for the environment. And finally, the analyst would also have virtual machines to do their work as well, so the data stays within the environment still, even though the analyst, so the analyst in this case is also is also a user of this information, as he's providing it to the other researchers over here. No, but the channels for the VM are such that information, or we have control of the information that goes out of the VM. Even copy paste, if they try to copy or paste something out of the VM, we have the ability to block them via policy. RDP.
So it's RDP, right? Mm-hmm. And you're tracking cut, copy, paste within RDP?
Yes. Okay. And anything that, any vector that the researcher could use outside of this virtual instance is being watched, if you will. And that's using the Trend Micro solution right now. And it's an endpoint solution. It's not following data that's in motion or data at rest or fingerprinting.
Well, I was just wondering, what about screen captures from the host OS?
That's something that we're trying to grapple with right now. I mean, there's nothing to say that a person couldn't take their phone and just take shots of their monitor. Yeah, if you have a good idea, we'd like to hear it. That's something that we've discussed as well.
We thought, if someone would find it very hard, they can wait, they can have a low time right now. You can never demand anything unless you install a micro camera in my hand, implant something and just say, okay, I'm going to monitor every step you are doing. So basically, I think there's no way of preventing that sort of act. So like screen printing, I think screen printing will probably hack into the kernel and record, but then if they take a cell phone, nowadays the camera is so lightweight, what they can do.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of, you've got this client running on the host machine, and there's certain things you can do on the host that, obviously you can't control. I guess kind of what I was thinking of, I think the medical school, for their electronic test taking, they basically lock the whole machine down. whether or not that might be something, that's
Yeah,
it's not going to cover everything, but that would be
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the points that we like to try to make here too is that you want to develop a set of policies that control the data or inadvertent or malicious movement of this data without imposing a lot of restrictions for the end user. So there's always that balance there. There's always that fight.
I think in principle you could provide like 3 or 4 client machines and then put in a room with security cameras monitoring 24 hours. But then the thing is, how many researchers is going to do that? So I think the purpose for this is mostly to prevent people from inadvertently doing things uncarefully and leak data out, say through emails, say, oh, this is the data you wanted, and then boom. So that sort of, so this is I think the main, because most researchers have trust, otherwise, why even say cares them, so.
Yeah, and we have to admit that this is a prototype right now, and we know we have a lot of things that we need to look at, and so it's constantly evolving right now. David, go ahead.
Bill, can you clarify why is there a need for to have unfettered access from the VM instance? For instance, you said you want there's this tension between making sure that you don't tie down the researcher too much, but you envision that they need to have the ability to have HTTP connections out, or what are some of the restrictions?
No, we don't have.
Well, yeah, and it's, so far we're developing policies right now. HTTP, they might not have. Certain researchers may not have HTTP access, and using the Trend Micro product, we've identified ways to do that. So I think what it really comes down to is knowing what the data is and how it moves, and what the best way is that we can protect the researcher from doing something stupid. It's better than the system that's in place now, of course. So, like I said, it's an evolving sort of thing that we're working through. Issues that both of you gentlemen are coming up with. Sure.
How do you prevent a user from copying and transferring an entire instance of a virtual machine?
The servers are locked down, so they're not going to be able to get at the root VMD DK files. So.
How much of an overhead is having for performance because of all these external policies that you don't apply on huge
we haven't noticed significant impedance of performance on these VMs. We've got a lot of we've got a lot of reserve power over here, and we restrict the number of client VMs to some certain amount. So
I think Lydia is asking. I think you're asking how the DLP product is going to.
Because we have all these DLP and policies that you have implementing on the usage of data and then how the transfers are going on. So if you have a huge amount of data that you want to pass in.
Right. Yeah. And
the data was passed in through a separate provision, so they are going to provide an NAS and then going to mount it to that VM. So I don't think that it's going to hit the performance because most of the activity, the channels, if you don't say you want to move from, this hard network drive to that location, so you're not going to trigger any kind of DLP event. So you can work, running all the algorithm, whatever you do on that VM, so it's not going to trigger DLP. But only if you want to go out to do something, you say, okay, I'm going to leave this virtual environment to move some data and try it out. So then that DLP is going to.
They're applying all the statistical tools on the local secure workspace, and then the results will be transferred back to where the host machine is.
That's right. Yeah. Some. If we go back a couple slide right here, since these data sources, if you will, are within the medical workspace, so we know DLP applied to them. It's a trusted zone, if you will. But if you try to move something off of this, like say you have a share on the UNC network that is outside of your medical workspace, that would be subject to policy enforcement. To answer your question about big data sets, frankly, I can't say that we've tried it on terabyte size genomic data or anything of that nature. And I would expect, just logically, that it would have an impact scanning huge files. something that we haven't really addressed or even tested against in our current environment.
So if you have, I'm confused by that. So if you have the terabyte data set, then when the workspace comes up, isn't the data already going to be mounted there?
Yes, it would. So it wouldn't necessarily be outside of the domain of the workspace.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about something like you're trying to move it off to a computer at Purdue or something of that
Right.
nature, then that would be.
But that would be slow. But you don't want them doing it anyway.
Right. So it'd be blocked
Yeah.
essentially.
Right.
So
it'll be
yeah, this.
slow, and that's a good thing.
Right. So here I am, just the last couple of slides here. We talk about the product that we've currently installed as part of our first prototype, and how Trend Micro goes about developing policies and enforcing policies for endpoint DLP. We see that you would define a digital assets, which is the keywords and patterns and fingerprints that Xiaoshu was talking about earlier, and as well as file attributes, like we can search for files with specific file extensions and things of that nature. The second step, of course, is to create templates that house a number of these digital assets that they're talking about here, define the rules about of how these assets are being grouped. And then we'll create a policy where we would identify a target, in this case one of the secure medical workspace virtual machines. We select the channels or vectors, whether it's printing we want to look at or SMB shares or things of that nature. We select, create templates and actions on what to do when a particular policy has been violated. And of course, all these policies are downloaded onto the client, so the client is responsible for enforcing all of these policies that are defined within the server. And finally, there's a monitor where you can create reports and things of that nature, so you can find out who's creating policy violations, etc. VJ.
If he's doing a derivation of the existing data set, can the client or the researcher enforce his own policies on the particular data set and then upload back to the policy manager or something like that, so that can be applied on that data set wherever it goes?
If a researcher would like to create his own set of policy boundaries, if you will, he could relay that to the virtual machine administrator or whoever is administering the server for this to create a new policy. Like, say for instance, a researcher has a team of individuals that are working for him, and certain individuals can and can't do certain things. The Trend Micro product will allow for taking and applying policies and different policies to specific virtual instances.
Okay, not specific to work that he has done, but to the instance itself.
I don't think anyone is going to create policies, for his own company, because most of policy is set up, for say HIPAA compliant. That means, when you manipulate or touch patient data, you have to adhere to the government's compliance. If there's no government mandate, no one is going to care about that, right? Because there are laws. So this is mostly for, say, okay, we allow the researcher, he applied the RIB, he say, I want to access it, so we said, okay, you access this data and use it legally. No one is going to say, okay, I can only allow you to do these things and that. So that is not going to happen.
Okay.
So I have just one question. So
go ahead.
in this model of yours, if you have, say I have a researcher working on something and I derive data from a data set, will the policies apply on the derived data as well? Will it track the changes through?
It's actually called fingerprinting, something that we haven't delved into yet in our prototype. But theoretically, the DLP, the hashing of information and fingerprinting data would also take care of derived data as well.
I think it's yes or no. Say if I do an algorithm on a patient data, and then say I generate a table containing some medical record, but this is not compliant with HIPAA. So, but if you want to send this data out, the traffic, assume it's a clear text, it's going to be scanned. And if it's not compliant with HIPAA, it's going to be blocked. But if you say, I'm going to, move this, field, if I really want to get it out, I kind of, doing a pattern, I run my own, just kind of shift the character, and then you try to get out, and then you probably can, go through without being detected. So that's why, in the future, we would like to use you guys' technology is to at least to tag it, to say, okay, we don't know for sure, the data contains, but we know at least some dirty data.
Right.
Is out. So that's for mostly for auditing. So if something happens, so we know who is doing what, right? So if we know, eventually some news says, okay, this kind of data is leaked out, so we know who is using it and who has transferred some kind of dirty outcome from the sensitive data.
So the current solution you have right now will scan every single packet going out and do a regex match on every single packet.
Yeah.
So
any content leaked out of the workspace is going to be inspected.
So have you guys done like performance studies on that to see?
No.
Not done
So we are now our purpose is trying to implement the prototype and make it work, and then we are going to figure, to worry performance of.
And does it work?
Yeah.
It works. Yeah.
Yeah, as you can see right here, this is the console.
Phil, I just want to say one more thing on the performance thing. Typically, what we've envisioned is that a lot of data is not going out. What's going to go out is stuff for a paper or some condensed results, but not like if you can bring whatever you want in. You can bring terabytes in principle, but nothing like that's going to typically go out. Not for our use cases.
So Phil, you're under the impression that, let me give you a simple case. So I have data, sensitive data that I have access to. That's I've now just created a PDF of some examples from that data. Trend Micro is going to flag that for you?
Well, if it were a vector PDF file, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have the actual text in it.
But if you print it as an image, so Trend Micro.
No, I'm just trying to get the capabilities that you've tested that you currently think are available in Trend. What do you think, Phil? Is going to do that or not?
No, it will not. It will not. If the PDFs can be created with vectors and not have any text in them per se at all. So that would not be a scannable content. However, if you don't give them the tools to create PDFs on it.
It seems to a lot come down to how you define the policies, right? I mean, you could lock everything down. And so how much of the project is getting the technology set up, and how much of it is the policy creation?
Well, right now we've concentrated a lot on just finding the right off-the-shelf products that would satisfy the policies that we know about right now, with some of the obvious vectors and protecting some of the obvious vectors.
So some companies' product has pre-built set of policies. They keep a compartment, so you can just load it up. Because they are going to use their, they know what kind of field they are going to scan with their technology. So you just set it up, say, all these kind of data contain, tell me, and then, but you are going to probably set up the actions. Say if you want to ask them to conform or send a report. So these actions, but then they are going to set up the inspection policies for you. So.
Okay, so I've just been a bit motioned that we're sort of out of time here. I just want to quickly discuss some of the future directions that we're going with this. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts in this, so we're looking toward trying to define ways that they can automated virtual environment creation capabilities, sort of things just to help out create these environments. We're also collaborating with other folks that are in this space. The guys are asking the really tough questions over there. Fabian Monros, UNC Computer Science, and some of the stuff that he's done in data governance. And just recently we've engaged Elisa Bernardino at Purdue. She's a professor at Purdue Computer Science, and some of the things that she's been doing about creating and maintaining policies and things of that nature. So here we are. Any more questions?
Yeah, that's one more. Back 2 slides. Just from your experience, since the last time we talked, I know you guys. Sounds like you've gone pretty far, so that's great. That you're looking at a couple of vendors and trying to decide which ones you're going to go with. Seems like you selected Trend Micro. How much of your own analysis have you done to be confident that this is not vaporware?
Yeah, I mean, we've done some testing with the Trend Micro product.
Yeah.
We've identified, frankly, we've identified a couple of bugs, a couple of holes in this that we're working with them on. One of the reasons why we picked Trend Micro is their price point right now is very reasonable. Some of the other vendors are up in the 25K range, and right out of the gate we've sort of disqualified them. So we're working with what we have right now, trying to make sure that all the policies and things that we've defined are at least being met at some level with our first prototype.
And a follow-up to that, do you have any case studies lined up, like number of people ready to, some data sets that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're just starting to work with some of the business analysts over at UNC and to provision an actual VM and get them working with it and get their feedback on some of this. So that's our next step right now is to initiate that process. Very important. Thank you. Go ahead.
How are you going to handle much of the various software packages that the researchers need to use to deal with the data?
Right now, we've identified sort of a baseline researcher workspace tools that are just Microsoft Office, SAS, those sorts of things. And we take those and we create a baseline VM package that you can pull out of a basket and customize further depending on what the researcher needs. So if a researcher needs some other third-party tool to do their thing, then certainly we would take one of the common ones out of the basket, modify it, and then provide it to the researcher so they can do their job.
And what about the licensing issues, where a lot of times researchers will buy the individual license themselves? Do you think you'll mess around with that, or just simply say you're going to buy a license and it's going to reside here?
Yeah, I mean, if the end user has the licensing for it, then by all means, then they certainly have access to use that product. Right now, we're only talking about products that are available via some sort of volume licensing that are available through UNC and all of their subsidiaries.
But just to follow up on his question, so you are, in the images that you create, they do have permissions to install other programs locally, right? On that. What do you say?
No.
No. And that's something that we're still discussing right now, is just how tight we need to lock down these virtual workspaces. I mean, basically, all we can do is just put an equal sign up on the screen, and that's all they can do. So, based on Windows policy enforcement, group policy enforcement, things of that nature. So, and that's one of the key things here, is that now that we've got an environment that's defined, we can strictly control exactly what they have access to on that environment. Once again, trying to stop the researcher from shooting themselves in the head.
I had one really small question. Do you know, of all the content you have, what percentage of the content is really stuff you care about? Like, for example, I have a huge document, and then I have like snippets of social security numbers in them, or names that I really care about, versus the rest of the document is just...
Yeah, the files that I've seen so far are, like you said, Word documents, Excel documents, Access, databases, things of that nature. I don't know how big they're going to get. They could be huge. I've heard a number of varying descriptions of how big and how small this data is, depending on what the researcher is trying to do. So, I mean, that's another discovery process that we have to go through here. And hand in hand, we're going to be working to see, is the system actually performing well? It doesn't hinder the researcher. So, yeah, it's something that we're trying to engage the researchers on right now to try to find out.
When the next leak happens from the system, will there be tools available to examine the leaked data versus what's inside to know, okay, well, these 5 people touch this data, let's start with them and see who handled that?
If you look back here, and this is some of the testing that I've done in our environment. This is the administrative console for the Trend Micro product. What we see here is we see that there has been an outbreak right here. What's happening over time, what virtual machines and what users were causing these events. So there's in this particular product, there's a lot of ways that you can report on exactly what policies were violated and what violated them and who violated them. So there's a way forensically to go back in time to find out, okay, it was Johnny, so, you know.
What about for items, though, that you aren't aware that a policy was violated? You know, let's say someone puts a screen reader on and copies that way, then at least you could go back. Will you have a way to say, okay, this is the data that's out on the outside, compare it to what's on the inside, and these people had access to it?
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak to that right now.
It might be something to consider just for, it's not going to prevent a breach, but it's a bit of CYA once it happens.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and that would go along with the whole forensic analysis of, you know, what is the data that got leaked and compare it to, you know, what has been provisioned. And certainly there are no tools right there that are involved in our endeavor here that does that automatically.
In principle, you can set up a very high security. You can, you know, because I don't know about Trend Micro, but I have watched some other companies demo. You can, if you suspect any kind of traffic, you can quarantine, and then you can ask the security officer to inspect the content, and then before granting them, you know, a green light or red light. So you certainly can in this environment, because now you take over the environment, right? You check all the outbound traffic. So it's a matter of convenience versus, you know, how much kind of you get about your data. So you, in principle, you can just ask someone to, you know, say, oh, their supervisor had to sign out of some content. So, you know, that's what.
Okay, I just want to make it known that for internal RENCI users, this PowerPoint presentation is up on SharePoint. And for any external people, or people external to RENCI anyway, if you want a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, just leave your email address with me, and I'll make sure that you get a copy. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.